Good morning. Your time may be early morning there.
Yeah, it's about 4:30.
Yeah, okay. So basically, inside this room, you cannot able to see much people because this is only for organizers and speakers, and the students will be joining in a different link in a webinar.
Gotcha.
Okay, and possibly if you can able to speak both using both English and Malayalam, I think it will be much appreciated.
Okay, sounds good.
It's 4 o'clock.
So how do you know when it joins?
So no. Basically, we have already circulated this with the institutions across Kerala. So what happens is like they'll be joining in a different link and they'll be listening. And at the end of the session, we'll be inviting questions from them. So they'll be forwarding their questions in the chat, which I'll usually the moderator will handle it and just share with you.
Gotcha. So I won't be able to see who's asking or anything.
You won't be able to see it. So this is a platform built by a startup company in Trivandrum, TechGensia, who got an award from the Honorable Prime Minister of India.
Got it. Okay. Very good. When will people be able to start seeing? Or are they already seeing?
Right already seeing. It's like live.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good.
So we'll start anyway. So good evening friends. ഇന്ന് KDISC ആഭിമുഖ്യത്തിൽ നടക്കുന്ന കേരള ഇന്നോവേഷൻ ടോക്ക് സീരീസിലേക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും സ്വാഗതം. വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾക്കിടയിൽ നൂതന ആശയ സംസ്കാരം പ്രോത്സാഹിപ്പിക്കാനായി KDISC ആഭിമുഖ്യത്തിൽ നടക്കുന്ന കേരള ഇന്നോവേഷൻ ടോക്ക് എന്ന പ്രഭാഷണ പരമ്പരയിലെ 2ാം സീസണിലെ 10ാമത്തെ പ്രഭാഷണ പരമ്പരയാണ്. ഇന്ന് നമ്മോടൊപ്പം എത്തിച്ചേർന്നിരിക്കുന്ന വ്യക്തിത്വം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മിസ് ദീപ കർത്ത, and she is the founder and CEO of Journyz, and she has selected a topic. നമ്മോടൊന്ന് സംവാദിക്കാനായിട്ട് അദ്ദേഹം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ദീപ സെലക്ട് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന ടോപ്പിക് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഹൗ ടു മേക്ക് ഇന്നോവേഷൻ ഇറ്റ്സ് എ പാർട്ട് ഓഫ് യുവർ DNA. വളരെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ ആ ടോപ്പിക്കിനെ കുറിച്ച് നമ്മൾ ഒന്നുകൂടെ ചിന്തിക്കുമ്പോൾ വളരെ റെലവൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ടോപ്പിക്കാണ്. കാരണം ഇതിൽ കൂടുതലും ഇന്നോവേറ്റേഴ്സും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ബഡ്ഡിങ് ഇന്നോവേറ്റേഴ്സും ഒക്കെ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആൾക്കാരാണ് ഇതിനകത്ത് കൂടുതലും ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിൽ അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അവരെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം അവരെ കൂടുതലും ഇന്നോവേഷൻ ബേസ് ചെയ്തും അതിലേക്ക് കൂടുതലും സമയം ചെലവഴിക്കുകയും പുതിയ ഐഡിയകളും പ്രോഡക്റ്റുകളും ഐഡിയനെ മാറ്റി ഒരു പ്രോഡക്റ്റ് ആയിട്ടും പ്രോസസ്സായിട്ടും സിസ്റ്റമായിട്ടും ഒരു സോഷ്യൽ എന്റർപ്രൈസും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു അപ്ലൈഡ് റിസർച്ച് ആയിട്ടും അവരുടെ ഐഡിയ മാറ്റുന്ന ഒരു സൈക്കിളിലാണ് അവരിപ്പോൾ. അപ്പോൾ അവരെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ഇന്നോവേഷൻ എങ്ങനെ നിങ്ങളുടെ DNA ഒരു പാർട്ടാക്കി മാറ്റാമെന്നുള്ളതിന് വളരെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആണ്. അതിൻ്റെ ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ടോപ്പിക് എനിക്ക് പക്ഷേ തോന്നുന്നത് ഇന്ന് ഈ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസ് വളരെ അഭികാമ്യമായ ഒരു സബ്ജക്റ്റ് കൂടിയാണ്. ഇന്ന് നമ്മുടെ സ്പീക്കറിനെ കുറിച്ച് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ വളരെ വിശിഷ്ട വ്യക്തിത്വവും അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ നല്ല എക്സ്പീരിയൻസും കൂടിയുള്ളതാണ്. ഷീ ഈസ് ബേസിക്കലി എ ഗ്രാജുവേറ്റ് ഫ്രം കോളേജ് ഓഫ് എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗ് ട്രിവാൻഡ്രം, and as well as an MBA in strategy, finance and marketing and entrepreneurship from Kellogg School of Management. And as once you read the profile, she has a plethora of experience in a lot of international companies and organizations, and at the same time she has contributed a lot in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation. ഒരുപക്ഷെ നമുക്ക് ഇതുപോലെയുള്ള ആൾക്കാരിൽ നിന്ന് കിട്ടുന്ന ഇൻസൈറ്റ്സ് ആയിരിക്കാം ഒരുപക്ഷെ നാളെ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഐഡിയ രൂപീകരണത്തിലും അതിലൊരു സോഷ്യൽ ഓണ്ടർപ്രണർഷിപ്പിലേക്കുള്ള നിങ്ങളുടെ യാത്രയെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ വളരെ മൂല്യമുള്ളതാക്കാൻ സഹായിക്കുന്ന രീതിയിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒഴുകുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള ഇൻസ്പയർ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ലീഡേഴ്സിൽ ഒരാളാണ്. ഇന്ന് ഇവിടെ നമ്മുടെ കൂടെ ഈ പ്രഭാഷണ പരമ്പരയ്ക്ക് വന്നെത്തിയ ദീപ കർത്തയെ KDISC പേരിലും ICT അക്കാഡമിയുടെ പേരിലും ഇവിടെ അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്യുന്ന എല്ലാവരുടെ പേരിലും ഞാൻ ഹാർദവമായി സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. ഓവർ ടു യു ദീപ ഫോർ യുവർ ടോക്ക്.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. This is very exciting for me to be here. I'm actually in Chicago. Ivide രാവിലെ 4:30 മണിയാണ്. So, and I think അവിടെ 4 മണിയല്ലേ ഇവിടെ? India, I think it's 4 o'clock.
Yes, 4 o'clock.
So, yeah. So I started off രാവിലെ 4 മണിക്ക്. I had to start off with an innovation. ഞാനിവിടെ കോഫി കുടിക്കാത്ത ആളാണ്. പക്ഷെ രാവിലെ 4:30 എല്ലാവരോടും സംസാരിക്കാനായിട്ട് കുറച്ച് കോഫി കുടിക്കേണ്ടി വരുന്നു. So started off with an innovation at the very beginning. Um, I cannot say everybody, but Dr. Manoj tells me that there are people from students from multiple universities and institutions. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to talk about innovation, especially to people that are innovative, right? See, innovation like most people don't necessarily think about things from an innovation perspective. പക്ഷേ Dr. Manoj you guys are all innovators. You're in the process of coming up with products and services and ideas and all that. So I just have a few slides put together, but this is going to be more of a conversation. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen quickly. So let's just start with the definition of innovation. You can see my screen, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So as you're all innovators, this is something that everybody knows, right? What is innovation? So it is about making changes in something established, right? Established a status quo, engane change cheyanam, engane challenge cheyanam. That is what innovation is all about, right? And when you talk about innovation, the question is, what kind of a person actually is innovative? You've all heard about right brain and left brain people, right? So left brain, and again, this is a fallacy. This has been disproved quite a number of times. But left brain is generally, it's all about analytical and control and reasons, math, science. Reality is what the left brain is all about, and right brain is all about imagination, creativity, intuition, art, etc., etc. So now innovation is actually really all about combining the left brain and the right brain together, right? You have to be a dreamer, you have to have the ideas, and you have to have plenty of ideas, and have to be able to think in the outside of the box, right? Outside of the box, status quo ke എതിരായിട്ട് you have to be able to think. But then it's all about taking that thought process and being able to execute on it, right? Etra ideas and with this audience, I can imagine that you have ഒരു 100 idea ഉണ്ടാവും എല്ലാ ദിവസവും, ഇല്ലേ? And what do you do with these ideas though? The ideas ഉണ്ടാവും, ideas varum, ideas പോവും, right? But what do you do with those ideas is what really makes the difference between just an idea and being innovative about it and making something happen with those ideas. So that is one of the first things, which is all about being analytical, being able to execute the ideas that you are coming up with your right brain. So most of the times, you've heard this concept of fight and flight, right? Fight or flight. So a lot of the times we actually deal in terms of fight or flight. It is ചൂട് ചായ കുടിക്കുന്നു, we drop it, right? Or car honk ചെയ്യുന്നു, we react. So a lot of the times it's all about fight or flight, which happens at the base of of the brain. Amygdala is where it happens. And most of the time we spend our entire day on fight or flight. And this is all about the front of the brain, the neocortex of the brain, where after you remove the fight or flight, how do you take the thoughts, how do you take it, how do you process it, and then how do you make it happen? Okay, so these are all, I mean, you'll find all these on the web. But what are the characteristics of an innovator? The first thing is, one big part of the fight or flight is about, you know uh, the whole sense of, I am, what I'm saying is right, and I don't have the ability to be flexible. Other is one of the biggest um, detractions, if you will, of being an innovator. So the first part of it is really all about empathy. What is empathy? Empathy in vechala, so here is an example where they're talking about a teacher when they're teaching their students, even though there is a teacher, they're wearing a student's shoes, for example. നമ്മുടെ ഓഡിയൻസിനോട് understanding their point of view and really being able to see the world in their point of view, right? That is what empathy is. So start with empathy, start with curiosity. That is going to be one of the biggest things that is needed. Innovator avanaita, right? And then it's all about finding problems and really being able to look at problems. So, for example, when you're driving in a car, right, or when you're on the train, when we look outside in a car or in a പോകുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും, you don't pay attention to what color the car is. But when you start thinking about, I want to find a red car, then all of a sudden, all you see are red cars. So, just like that, one of the big things for us is to say, instead of being in a autopilot kind of mode, be intellectually curious and look for, start with questions, right? And look for problems. So it is not everything, don't take things for granted, but you're looking for problems and starting with a question, and eventually you'll find an answer. The question is, how do you find the answer? If we already know, if we come up with a mindset, എനിക്കറിയാം, right? അങ്ങനത്തെ mindset then it's going to be a problem, right? If you already know the answer, then might as well stop looking. That humility to say, I may or may not know the answer, but let me actually figure out, let me actually figure out what the answer could be. And when you answer in the question is, where do you look for it, right? Do you look for it in the typical places? You know, e-book നോക്കിയാൽ answer കിട്ടും, right? Or e-person ചോദിച്ചാൽ answer കിട്ടും. And or this is what I've always done before, let me just do that way. So that is one way. And the other way is to say, you know what? Everybody else is going one way. How about if I go another way, right? And the ability, so that actually requires the ability to take risk. And that actually requires, the ability to overcome FOMO, right? Everybody knows FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. It's okay if your friends are doing something else. കൂട്ടുകാർ വേറെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്തോട്ടെ. But നമുക്ക്, we should be able to do, we should be able to go another path and be brave enough to say, yeah, നിങ്ങളുടെ പാട്ടിന് പൊയ്ക്കോ. I will go this route because I'm curious as to what's going on, right? The next thing is going to be being networked, which is very, very, very important, right? Yes, you could be the smartest person in the world, right? ഭയങ്കര IQ ആണ്, ഭയങ്കര മിടുക്കനാണ്, മിടുക്കിയാണ്. That is great. That takes you somewhere. But to actually go further, you have to be able to connect with people who are like you and who might not be like you, right? So that ability to pull in the resources and ideas from different people and being able to uh, synthesize all of that and help get others help that becomes very important. Adhik- excuse me. The next thing is going to be all about ideas എല്ലാം കിട്ടി, you're looking at options, വേറെ pathil പോയി, and then the ability to be observant, right? Observant becomes very important because, you know, um, only when you start seeing, you're you're doing an experiment, ആളുകളോട് ചോദിക്കുന്നു, you're observing things, but it's all about looking at what's happening and paying attention to the changes that are going on, paying attention to what is happening around the world. Right? So creators in general, and then what is the definition of creators? Ideas are dime a dozen, right? human beings have probably hundreds of ideas in a day. It is all about taking action on the ideas that makes the difference between an actual creator versus a dreamer. You have to start with the dreamer, being a dreamer. കാരണം സ്വപ്നം കണ്ടില്ലെങ്കിൽ ഐഡിയസ് ഉണ്ടാകത്തില്ല, right? But ആ ideas എടുത്തിട്ട് what do you do with it? How do you take action on it? The next part of it is being resilient. Resilience എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ എന്താണ്? I mean, everybody knows the story of Edison, right? Edison figured out light bulb, I think at the end of 100 plus attempts. If we are not resilient, ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യം ട്രൈ ചെയ്തു നടന്നില്ല, രണ്ടാമത്തെ പ്രാവശ്യം ട്രൈ ചെയ്തു നടന്നില്ല, and then what happens? We are like, okay, I'm this is hurting me, this is hurting my ego, I cannot do this anymore, right? And disappointment ആയി, നിരാശയായി, മതിയായി, എല്ലാം വെച്ചിട്ട് വേറെ let's go to the beaten path, right? Let's actually go back from the innovative path. Innovative pathil പോയി ഒന്നും നടക്കുന്നില്ല. Let's actually come back to the beaten path. But this is the path where you might fall, come back, fall, and come back. And if you're able to do it as a process, right? ഇത് നമ്മൾ personal ആയിട്ട് എടുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ then it's a problem. But if you're able to do it as a process, saying, I know that I'm going to fail, and എല്ലാ പ്രാവശ്യം fail ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും use it as a learning opportunity. What worked, what didn't work, അങ്ങനെ തിരിച്ചു വന്നിട്ട് if you're able to come back, that part becomes really important. That is there is a word called grit. Grit is all about the ability to face things, come back, make changes, try again. And again, the reflective portion becomes important. You've heard the definition of insanity as well, right? Apparently Einstein said it, but probably not. Probably it was somebody else that said it. The definition of insanity is about doing the same things but expecting different results, right? So when you say resilient, it's not about, okay, I drop and I get up and try again. It's like in some Hindi movie or something, vedi vechu Rajnikant movie, vedi vechu tharavinu, get up, vedi vechu. No, that's not what it's about, right? It's about tharavinu, and then how do you change, right? How are you reflecting about it? How do you analyze it, and how do you change and start again? So these are the various aspects. It's a lot, right? You start with empathy, again, not being full of yourself, but being full of the problem, your customer, right? Start with empathy and going all the way until this is the cycle, right? ഇത് ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യം അല്ല. This is something that you do over and over again, right? And this would be the characteristic of an innovator's mindset, right? And the question is now, is this possible for us? ഇത് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ? Is this something that is ഒരു ദിവസം maybe I can do it? Can I do it for a week? ഒരു month ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ? ഒരു year ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ? 5 years ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമോ? All of you are very young, and 1 year might feel like a long time for you. 5 years might feel like a long time for you. 25 years might feel like, oh my god, what is that, right? But the reality is that as you get into your work, or as you get into your work, let's say that you're starting with a company, it is surprising, but in a year or two, a lot of people start going down this beaten path, because it is like, hey, I took a risk, it didn't work out, I got beaten back, right? Or it could be that, what, it is very comfortable, I'm getting a paycheck, it's very comfortable for me, so therefore I am on the beaten path, right? Or I have ideas, but I cannot make it work because I'm not networked enough, right? Or I have ideas, ഇഷ്ടംപോലെ ideas ഉണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ execute ചെയ്യാൻ സമയമില്ല. There you go. So all these reasons why, surprisingly, you would think that people might take a few years to get to this mode. Surprisingly, it happens very, very fast. And as you are thinking about, as you're being innovators and thinking about things, these are the things that you want to think about to say, where are you? Are you meeting this criteria? ഇവിടെ എവിടെയൊക്കെയാണ് എവിടെയൊക്കെയാണ് നമ്മൾ stuck ആവുന്നത്, right? So now this is another diagram that actually represents, okay, we talked about innovation, but how what is innovation, and innovation എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഏതൊക്കെ കാര്യങ്ങളിൽ innovate ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും, right? So I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail, but let me actually show you a few things, right? So for example, here, for example, look at this: signature or superior methods of doing your work. Here, right? This is where a lot of you've heard about automation tools, right? You've heard about AI automation tools. A lot of the automation tools in AI could be about process innovation, right? It could be to say, hey, ഞാൻ എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളും manual ആയിട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നു, ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യാൻ it takes 10 hours. Automation ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ I'm able to do it in 2 minutes. That would be process automation, right? Here is another one about distinguishing features and functionality. Let's think about the first Adite, I know that India is more of an Android shop, but think about the first iPhone that happened, right? That was something about distinguishing features and functionality, right? ഇപ്പോൾ ആപ്പിളിന് വലിയ ഇന്നോവേഷൻ ഒന്നും ഇല്ല. ഇപ്പോൾ ആപ്പിളിന്റെ innovation might be more about, like here, there is branding somewhere here, branding and maybe some amount of features. അതാണ് ആപ്പിളിന്റെ innovation. But the first iPhone was a great innovation, right? Take a look at this, which is about support and service, right? Service is an innovation where, let's say that, let's think about 5-star hotels, right? What's the difference between 5-star hotels and a regular hotel? That would be the service, right? There's a lot of companies that actually, organizations that distinguish themselves on service, right? Channels. Take a look at the channel. As uttiri companies that I've seen is all about, hey, I am the Uber of something. I am the Uber of restaurants, or I am the Uber of trucks. The channel, that could be an innovation, right? We talked about the brand. Apple's the brand. Again, when you take a look at an Android functionality versus iOS functionality, Android being open, probably the functionality is a lot more. But from a branding perspective, again, you might not see this in India, but in the US, branding perspective, most people have Apple, even though it's a lot more expensive, because there is that special quality associated with the brand, right? Then here is another one: customer engagement. Um, there is a company called Southwest. It's an airline called Southwest in the US. And their biggest thing was they were a low cost provider, Anna, right? Just like a lot of a few airlines in India, low cost provider, Anna. But one of the things that made them very, very distinct was how they interacted with the customer. So our day, when they're talking to their flight attendants and all that, they give them full freedom to interact with the customer. Typically ഒരു polite ആയിട്ടല്ലേ സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്. It's like, hello, welcome to, എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു polite സംസാരമല്ലേ. This one was, they let their employees talk to the customer as human beings. And they said, you can have an attitude. So it'll be things like, I've heard examples of, where there was a customer who said something like, my dinner the potato sheriyalla, this is like a, I didn't like the potato or something. And the flight attendant's like, oh, I'm sorry, bad potato kind of thing. So it is more about, you interact with them as human beings, and you're allowed to have fun at your job. So that was like a very interesting thing that no other airline did, right? Everybody else is totally polite. And these guys came in and they were making jokes, and, they were having an attitude. So again, I just wanted to show you some of the examples of what different companies do from an innovation perspective. Again, this one, like something like, when you take a look at something like SpaceX or Tesla, there were electric cars before Tesla. So what made it different? What made Tesla different is not this part. I mean, there is pieces of this, but it is how were the offerings delivered to the customers. Tesla was one of the first companies who did not have dealership. So they disrupted. Typically കാർ വാങ്ങിക്കുന്നത് എങ്ങനെയാണ്? ഡീലർഷിപ്പിൽ പോയി കാർ വാങ്ങിക്കും. And Tesla was one of the first companies ഇന്റർനെറ്റിൽ പോയി ഓർഡർ ചെയ്യാം, right? And then you get a car that was very distinct. So അങ്ങനെ there are different ways of doing innovation, and all of them are again completely depending on what your industry is, and where the problems are, right? So now this is what is called a Maslow's hierarchy. You might have heard about Maslow's hierarchy, where the bottom of the pyramid, it's really all about survival, right? Shelter, clothing, things like that. So if you go to a caveman, or a caveman node in the boy samsarichittu, namukku social media venom jovichala, their answer is going to be what and all, right? Are you crazy? Because for them, it's all about how do I survive the next tiger attack, right? Or how do I make sure that my family is safe? So again, depending on where you are, depending on where things are, there is innovation at various levels, right? At the bottom level, where, so for example, again, in a, let's say it is a poor neighborhood, there nobody's thinking about, oh, we don't have enough to eat, let's do social media. Not at all, right? There it might be all about, oh, namukku fire invent here, let's actually have clothes. Let's find something that, a better bow and arrow, better cooking mechanism, right? So it kind of goes up the chain, where here again, when people are getting organized, and I'm not talking about the history of the world here. This is actually talking about at any given point of time where things are. So for example, ഇവിടെ climate change is a problem now, right? കേരളയില് കഴിഞ്ഞ രണ്ട് മൂന്ന് വർഷമായിട്ട് the rains have been ഭയങ്കര മഴ, right? ഇവിടെ യുഎസില് same problem. ചിലയിടത്ത് there's വെള്ളമില്ല, ചിലയിടത്ത് ഭയങ്കര rain. So we actually go from here back to here and said we have to solve for some of these things, right? So again, so I'm not talking about ഇവിടെ fire വന്നു and now it is here, not at all. There is always a cycle where, you actually start moving up this hierarchy, and based on where you are, the technologies change. So some of the technologies that namak ellarku ariyavuna technology, nammal ellaru using the technology would be, again, social media and things like that, right? uh, you know um, um, so in the last few years, as the world has gotten more rich, and as the world has kind of gone up this hierarchy, there's been a lot of technologies in this area. Pashe, you know as things change, as the world order changes, you actually keep going from the bottom and keep changing, right? And again, depending on where, what you see around you. Namala, we talked about empathy, right? As you figure out what you see around you, you might actually decide in any of these areas, to be an innovator, right? And the last thing that I want to talk about is, how do you do that? I mean, we talked about innovation being part of your DNA, and this is something that is very important. having a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Fixed mindset, നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞില്ല നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ, you know, I'm very proud, ഞാൻ ഭയങ്കര smart ആണ്, I'm very proud, and you know, I like showing people that I'm smart. അങ്ങനെയാണെന്ന് വെച്ചോളൂ, right? അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ you know, it's like, hey, I want to look smart, so I'm looking smart in front of people. So I obviously don't want to be challenged, because if there is something that is beyond my level of intelligence, you know, ആളുടെ മുമ്പിൽ I don't want to look stupid, right? So I don't want to be challenged, right? So this is a situation where it's all about, you know, I'm going to avoid challenges. And again, you know, I don't want to look bad in front of people. So ഒന്നും നടന്നില്ലെങ്കിൽ, you know, you just go away from that. You know, I give up easily, which means smaller effort, right? So this is a fixed mindset kind of phenomenon. And a lot of us actually fall within this trap, right? And this can happen any age. ഇത്, you know, ഇന്ന വയസ്സിൽ നടക്കണം അങ്ങനെയൊന്നും ഇല്ല, right? ഇത് ഏത് ഏജിൽ വേണമെങ്കിലും സംഭവിക്കാം. And versus a growth mindset, the belief is that, so the fixed mindset, the belief is that, you know, I was born with it, right? Intelligent ആണ് or not. But the growth mindset is all about intelligence is something that can be developed, right? There is a book that talks about 10,000 hours. You can be um, you can be super intelligent, or you can be an expert in anything that you spend 10,000 hours. It can be the world's hardest thing, it doesn't matter. But if you spend 10,000 hours, you will be the expert in that. So this is all about intelligence can be developed, which means you have a desire to learn. So therefore, you're not running away from challenges, right? You're running towards these challenges, not running away from the challenges. We talked about challenges face ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും, obviously there will be setbacks, no doubt about it. But how do you persist in the face of setbacks? Again, not like, you know, you're just falling down and coming right back up. അങ്ങനെയല്ല. You're falling down, you're understanding why it happened, you're changing something, and then standing right back up, right? And then it helps with the growth as well, right? So this actually, which means that you're putting in a lot more effort. So all of these have are directly proportional to the amount of effort. Again, it's not like I'm smart, so it's going to happen to me. Not at all, right? I'm smart, I have my eyes open, I'm empathetic, I'm networked, I'm connected, I'm persistent, I'm reflective, and then it is rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. പിന്നെയും ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. Right? So that is what develops a DNA changes your DNA, basically DNA rewiring, to change your DNA so that you are actually innovating every single day. Okay, so that is the end of what I have to share, and I am ready to take on any questions at this time. I hope you guys were able to hear me.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking for a long time.
Okay. So in between, I think a couple of questions which came with regard to innovation. So basically, one of the questions which I like to ask is like we talk about innovation, but in depth, many people talk about disruptive innovation. So how disruptive innovations really help even in this 21st century or even in this new normal?
Disruptive innovation. So when you say disruptive innovation, right, disrupting what is a question. So I showed that wheel earlier, right? എന്താണ് disrupt ചെയ്യുന്നത്? Are you disrupting a process? Are you disrupting a business model? Are you disrupting you know, the way, the channel, right? So disrupt ചെയ്യാന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ, you know,
So the question
think
is
about
like maybe the question asked maybe like whether it has a negative connotation when you talk about disruption and disrupt innovation. Do you think that it has have a positive connotation, or it will really affect positively to the society, to the people, or to this world in large, at large? That is the question.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, a great question. Thank you. So disruption, again, coming back to my question, right? Disruption vechala status quo change area. That is what disruption means, right? Disruption is not a negative thing. Disruption actually, even when you're actually working in companies, being disruptive, being disruptive. So let me take a step back. Let's say we are all having a meeting. Okay, നമ്മളെല്ലാം സംസാരിക്കുക. Being disruptive, saying that you're not letting somebody else talk or things like that, that is negative. But disrupting the status quo is what innovation is about, right? And the question is, what are you disrupting, right? Disrupting could be like, what do you call that, Uber or what have you, disrupted the way people actually call cabs, right? Or like Amazon disrupted the way in which you buy things. So disruptive innovation, most of the, there is incremental innovation and things like that, but most of the big companies that you see, those are disrupting the status quo of something, disrupting the status quo of the channel, disrupting the status quo of the business model. So yeah, disruptive innovation, I think, is it's not a negative thing at all. It's absolutely a positive thing.
Fine. Thank you. Next is, see, what are the challenges of innovation, especially in the state of Kerala? Because as you know that when you compare in US plus even in Kerala, even in these districts in Kerala, or even, as India as a whole. So basically, this should come from, maybe it should come from maybe the schools, colleges, or even we call it as educational institutions as a whole, or it should be a culture or something. That so innovation as a culture, or innovation should start from the education institutions or somewhere else.
Absolutely. So I studied in Kerala, right? I studied in till engineering college. I studied in Kerala, and then I did my MBA here, and I've seen my kids' education here as well, right? There is a big difference in, at least when I was studying. I don't know if things are different now or not, right? At least when I was studying, there's a big difference in how education happens in India versus how education happens in the US, for example, right? I have to say that the hardest that I've studied was for my MBA. That's when I've gotten the maximum amount of knowledge. And a lot of it was because in India, the focus was all about SSLC first kitto. It is all about getting that rank or mark or percentage or whatever. That was what the thing was all about. It was not about getting knowledge, right? There's very few people who actually got the knowledge. It is all about acing a test. പരീക്ഷയ്ക്ക് എത്ര കിട്ടും? That is what it's about. That is one thing. നമ്മുടെ mindset. And the second thing was, even in, I have to say, even while teaching, right? The teaching mechanisms used to be all about lectures, right? I mean, you give a lecture, you hear the lecture, write the notes, and then you regurgitate in the exam, right? But it's all about, one big difference is, you know, the way you learn, whether it's by discussions, or the way you look at it as, let's actually start with the problem and trying to solve it versus just understanding the concepts. So the person who asked the question is absolutely right. I think the students have to change, and the education system can use some change as well. It does make a big difference in, you know repeat it, what happens is that the left side of the brain is good. So on one hand, the left side of the brain is very good. That's why Indians are very good at math, because muscle memory under. You do it so many times, it's like boom, it comes. But the other side, which is all about being able to problem solve, that actually, what I've seen is that ഒത്തിരി ആളുകള്, they will be good at it, പക്ഷേ not coming out of the university. കുറച്ച് നാള് work ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് they are good at it. But inculcating that ability, again, classrooms low, during, using organizations and all that, inculcating that capability is very, very important. I absolutely agree with that. And I've seen that in the, in US, I would say that we really need a combination, because in US it's all about let's actually take a problem and solve it, but that practice is also not there. You need both, you know.
Right. Another question, maybe in connection with what you have explained, and you talked about the iPhone innovation. Exactly, it is an innovation. But when you talk about different types of innovation, on like incremental innovation, radical innovation, even disruptive innovation,
Mhm.
architectural innovation, but there is something called as transformative innovation, which is very sustainable. So, do you think that? And it says that transformative innovation is very difficult to make. So, what is your comment on that?
So transformative innovation is, transformative innovation actually requires a basic change in not just the innovator, but the people that are being innovated also, right? Because it's not, it is, a lot of these innovations, right? Think about it as, how is it fundamentally changing the way we behave, right? Or is fundamentally changing a society? It's not easy to fundamentally change a society, although now it is a lot more easier, because we are connected together by technology. Look at us right now, right? Because we are connected together by technology, one small change that happens in one part of the world, it's very easy, like immediately, instantly, for everybody else to see it. But transformative innovation is all about changing something and everybody adopting it and changing that mindset, right? So that is the reason why it's a little, why it is difficult. But and also things like social media make it hard, right? Because the thing is that everybody is able to talk about what they like, what they don't like, and create that chaos, which makes it difficult to seek to have that clarity. So that's why it is difficult. Is it possible? Yes, but it is definitely difficult, especially in today's world. On the one hand, it's easy that everybody can see it. On the other hand, the clarity becomes very difficult, and then kind of making everybody see something and change, that becomes difficult too. Like, think about something like, what we are going through right now with COVID, right? So you would think that, vaccines, it's a no brainer, everybody should have it. But the reality is that in social media, there's, especially in the US, there is this constant thing of vaccines are bad, right? So because of which, even if there are good innovations, making everybody see it and accept it becomes very difficult. Um, Again, because of technology, there are two sides of it.
Okay. Good. Next question, like, see, basically earlier there is a saying like industrialization drives economic growth. And even now people started saying that innovation drives economical growth. And some people at least are not believing other. It's a hypothetical statement, or some people may have apprehensions on that. But in this COVID-19 or in this pandemic, to an extent, I think right now people believe that innovation always drives economic growth. And what is your opinion on that, especially
Mhm,
as you're living in US comparatively
mhm,
with other countries?
mhm. So we talked about, great question. So we talked about that whole Maslow's hierarchy, right? Where we said, industrialization is right smack in the middle, நேர நடுக்கணும், right? In the Maslow's triangle. So, printing press, that was a big deal, right? Cotton mills, that was a big deal at some point of time. But what has been, think of the world's biggest companies right now, right? The big five: Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, right? So if you think of those companies, it is not industrialization at all, right? When you think about companies, like the amount of revenues, Facebook by itself, let's say, is let's close to $1 trillion company. But what it also allowed is thousands, hundreds of thousands of small businesses to, or Amazon, right? Hundreds of thousands of small businesses who did not have access to customers have that access, right? So that is not industrialization driving it; it is innovation driving it, right? So, and as things are getting smaller, right? It is really all about based on where the world is at this point of time. We are kind of, yes, there are some things at the bottom of the pyramid, but we are slowly moving towards the top of the pyramid. Right? As we're moving towards the top of the pyramid, the kind of things that are important are, how people make money. How does Amazon make money? They don't make money because of what they deliver. They make money because of their algorithms. They make money because of math, right? Facebook makes money because of algorithms, because of math. So when you actually think about it that way, are things like that happening right now? Absolutely. That is what is driving innovation. It's not industrialization. It is math that is driving innovation. It's math that is actually causing all these companies to be successful, right? And the ability to be connected together in this world and the ability to create all these innovations, is it possible? Absolutely possible.
Okay, last question. Like, if you want to build an innovation ecosystem or a culture in the minds of the students, especially, is it the knowledge part or even skill part or a combination of a both, or the experience or the what is called the environment? Or if I ask you to rank it or say what is the best important best ingredient to create that innovative mindset?
I would say the first thing is internal, right? It has to happen from within, right? I mentioned the last slide that I talked about is that growth mindset, right? There are certain things that can be taught, there are certain things that come with experience. So, for example, when I tell my kids about, hey, I've learned all of these things, let me tell you that so that you don't make the same mistake. The reality is that it doesn't matter. They will make the same mistake and they will learn. So, the experience is a big part of it. There's no doubt about it, right? The earlier we can realize and we can change ourselves, that is, for me, that is the first part. Obviously, colleges and schools and governments and organizations can do their part towards it to create exposure for students, right? That is definitely there. So creating the environment, creating the exposure is definitely there. But as you're creating the environment and exposure, it is not just about having a lab or computers and things like that. It is about teaching the mindset to people as well, right? Because it's really all about the mindset. Because you could put two people in the same place, give them the same abilities, but again, the person that actually is able to persevere and the person that is able to adapt, that is the person who can be innovative. The other person just cannot. Right? So if the educators can do anything, it is not just saying, hey, let's create these buildings for you, let's create a big building for you and say, go. It is the ability to help them understand what needs to happen from within to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you. I think questions are almost over. എന്തായാലും നമ്മോടൊപ്പം ഏതാണ്ട് 1 മണിക്കൂറോളം സമയം ചെലവഴിച്ച ദീപയ്ക്ക് KDISC പേരിലും ഇവിടെ ഒത്തുചേർന്നിരിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാവരുടെ പേരിലും നന്ദി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുന്നു. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ ഇന്നോവേഷൻ വളരെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ടോപ്പിക്കാണ്. കാരണം ഈ നമ്മുടെ ഇവിടെ ഇന്നോവേഷനെ കുറിച്ച് പറഞ്ഞാൽ പോലും കുട്ടികൾക്ക് പോലും ഒരുപക്ഷെ അവർക്ക് പല ചലഞ്ചസും ഇന്നോവേഷനെ കുറിച്ച് അവരുടെ മനസ്സിലുണ്ട്. കാരണം ഈവൻ അവരുടെ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ഈ പറഞ്ഞിപ്പം അതെല്ലാം നമ്മൾ ആ ഏരിയയിൽ കൂടെയൊക്കെയാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇന്ന് കടന്നുപോയത്. ഇപ്പം ഇവിടുത്തെ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ സിസ്റ്റം ആയാലും വിത്ത് ഡ്യൂ റെസ്പെക്ട് ടു അവർ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ സിസ്റ്റം, ബട്ട് there are some lacunae which we see when you compare with some other developed countries, and how to even build that innovation ecosystem and that culture. അത് തന്നെയാണ് നമ്മളെ ടോപ്പിക്കും, how innovation can be a part of your DNA. So maybe നമ്മൾ ആ ചെറിയ ട്വീക്കിങ്ങും ആ ചേഞ്ചസും ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടാവുമെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പക്ഷെ നമുക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത് we will also be in pace or in par with the developed countries, or even we can also create the Apples and Microsoft of the world. So once again, thank you so much for spending your time. I know that it's early morning, but you have taken time and taken some pain in being here for this program. അപ്പം KDISC പേരിലേക്ക് ഒന്നുകൂടി നന്ദി പറയുന്നു. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസ് ആയിട്ട് വന്നിട്ടുള്ള എല്ലാവർക്കും KDISC പേരിലും ഐസിടി അക്കാഡമിയുടെ പേരിലുമുള്ള അകമഴിഞ്ഞ നന്ദി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തിക്കൊള്ളുന്നു. അടുത്ത ആഴ്ച നമ്മൾ വേറൊരു പുതിയ സ്പീക്കറുമായി കാണുന്നവരേക്കും എല്ലാവർക്കും നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം. താങ്ക് യു.
Thank you.
Thank you.